thoughts now that I have finished the Camino de Santiago. Honestly, I first found out about the Camino de Santiago maybe like 10 years ago. I'm not really sure. And there was a documentary that I watched about it. There's probably more than one documentary on it. But I kind of thought to myself, this seems like something I might like to do. Like, I'm not too interested in doing a hike like the Appalachian Trail, where you have to carry all of your gear and you're gone for months at a time. But something like a week where you can stay at hotels and you're walking through towns and the mountains. I thought that sounds like something I might want to do. And I'm so glad that my friend Elena decided to join me for the Camino de Santiago. She has hiked the Camino before, but a different path. And she's a really, really lovely person. But honestly, the Camino is definitely one of the more difficult things I've done in my life, both physically and mentally. Well, part of this is because I literally didn't prepare. I mean, I could have definitely prepared much better for the Camino. As you guys know, I was literally like, oh, I have a backpack. I have a pair of tennis shoes. Okay, let's do this. I've done tons of hiking. You guys know I love to go hiking. But there's a lot of road walking in the Camino de Santiago. Some days you pass through a town and you're an hour just walking to get to the center of town. Sometimes you're walking along the highway. Some days less, some days more. And that was really tough on my feet. Really, really tough. I mean, I would not say that hiking 12 to 15 miles a day on its own is necessarily the toughest part because, for example, I have done quite a few hikes of that distance, but they're always in nature with soft terrain in the middle of the mountains, in the forest, in the, that sort of thing. And dang, like hiking on hard surfaces in the same way that I imagine would happen if you're running on hard surfaces. I mean, it really is a lot of impact on your body. Anyway, I'm not complaining at all. It was an incredible experience. I'm so grateful to have done it. I'm so happy that we made it to the end. We hiked for 7 days. When I say 7 days, I mean we started in La Guardia or Aguarda in Galicia, and we hiked 2 days. Then we took a rest day in Vigo, which is where she lives, so we stayed at her place. And then we hiked for 5 more days. So we were total gone for 8 days, if you include the rest day, but hiking for 7 days. So we did the Camino de Santiago, Camino Portugues por la Costa. So it's the Portuguese route. It actually starts in Portugal, but we picked it up where it crosses the border to Spain in the town of La Guardia or Aguarda, where I actually used to live. That's where I met Elena in the hiking club that we were both members of at that time. So on the first day, we hiked from La Guardia to Bayona. That was a mistake. We should have definitely stopped in Oia, which is where you're supposed to stop. But we were like, oh, it's only 4 hours. We'll keep going. Too ambitious, too ambitious. Maybe if we had actually, trained and prepared further in advance, it would have been fine. But that was 35 kilometers. That was rough. Second day, we hiked from Bayona to Vigo, 25 kilometers. Also rough. Then we rested, and then day 3 of hiking, we hiked from Vigo to Redondela. That was 23 kilometers. That was probably the hardest day for me. Honestly, my feet were in a lot of pain. Or was it the next day? Oh, that day was okay. Sorry, that day was okay. Then on day 4, we hiked from Redondela to Pontevedra. That was 20 kilometers. Honestly, that was really difficult for me, even though it was one of our lower kilometer days. My feet were really, really, really hurting that day. So by day 5, I switched over to sandals. I hiked in my flip-flops literally the next 3 days entirely, like only in flip-flops. It worked out really well, honestly. It was what I needed. So day 5, we hiked from Pontevedra to Caldas de Reis. In Caldas de Reis, we actually were able to, there's some natural hot springs there, so we were able to put our feet in and soak them. That felt really nice. So that one was 23 kilometers. And then on day 6, we hiked from Caldas de Reis to Padrón. That was 19 kilometers. And finally, on the 7th day, we hiked from Padrón to Santiago, which was 30 kilometers to finish out the hike. And I wanted to give you guys a couple of tips about hiking the Camino in case it's something that you might feel inspired to do yourself. So first, you might be asking, what the heck is the Camino de Santiago? Is it some backpacking trip in the middle of the mountains where you have to carry your own tent like the Appalachian Trail? Why no, it is not. The Camino de Santiago is
something that historically was done as a religious pilgrimage. There are many, many, many different paths ranging from everything from about 4 days worth of hiking to well over a month of hiking, depending on the particular path that you choose. The one that I chose, I believe it was either 7 or 8 days of hiking that we did. And the Camino de Santiago typically passes through towns. Now, depending on how many miles or kilometers you're able to hike each day, theoretically you should be able to reach a town every single night along your hike. So you should be able to stay in albergues, which are kind of similar to hostels and are only available for people that are hiking the Camino de Santiago. Or you can also rent a hotel, Airbnb. There's plenty of choices depending on your budget and your preferences. And of course, based on that, you'll also be able to buy drinking water or refill your bottle. You'll be able to stop at a restaurant or a grocery store, and you'll possibly even have the ability to wash your own laundry depending how long you're hiking for. So a lot of those things can be very beneficial and make the hike a little easier for you. So whether you're a new hiker or an experienced hiker, this is something that could be potentially for you. Now, in terms of equipment, you might be wondering, what the heck do I need? Well, as you'll see in my video, I wasn't the most prepared, and that had its pros and its cons, but you will definitely need a good pair of hiking shoes or hiking boots or hiking sandals, depending on your preference, and you'll definitely want to have them broken in before you start the hike. So you'll want to have walked with them in a variety of different surfaces, terrains, distances, temperatures, and this is something that I thought that I had covered because I had had my shoes for almost a year. I had hiked all around the world in them, all different distances, but one thing I hadn't done with my hiking shoes was I had not hiked for extended periods of time on road surfaces, so asphalt and pavement type surfaces. This is something that I had not done because that's not something I normally seek out in my hikes, and I figured, oh, I've hiked all over the mountains and rocky terrain and everything, it should be fine. Well, no, there is definitely a difference hiking on road surfaces compared to softer surfaces that you'll find in nature. The main difference being just the pounding that your feet take. It's really just a lot of like chalk and hard surfaces, so that'll be definitely something that you'll want to test out. In addition to your footwear, you'll also want to make sure you have the proper socks and that you've tested them out in combination. Depending on how tight your shoes are, you might want thinner socks, you might want thicker socks, you might go with hiking sandals. We saw almost everything on the trail. There's no right or wrong answer, it's just a matter of what works for you. In terms of other equipment, you're also going to need a backpack, and some people had everything from a really small day pack where they probably just had like snacks, water, and a few basics, to some people had, you know, really large backpacks. I had the backpack that I normally travel with as my carry-on. It's like a normal school-sized backpack. I got it at a thrift store a couple of years ago, and it happened to be what I had. It worked perfectly fine for me. Neither of us had a lot of stuff. We had, you know, we had definitely snacks, a couple of changes of clothes. We did wear some of our clothes again because it's like, well, if they're only sweaty, you know, like you're going to want to have clean, dry, or at least dry clothes every day because it might rain and you're going to be uncomfortable if you're wearing wet clothes. But beyond that, I mean, I wasn't really trying to impress anyone. I knew I was just going to get sweaty again that day. You'll want to have some basic toiletries. Of course, we mostly stayed at hotels, budget hotels, and shared the cost. So there were things like shampoo, soap, towels, but there were a couple times that places we stayed did not have towels. So we were glad to have our lightweight towels with us. You'll definitely want to have some first aid type equipment with you, such as treatment for blisters, pain relievers, and any other stuff that you might need. For example, if you're a female, you might want to bring stuff in case your period comes. I'm trying to think what else. Really, I think pain relievers and blister stuff were the only things that I used. Like medical tape could be helpful. Of course, you'll be passing through town, so you can buy supplies at the pharmacies, but pharmacies are closed on Sundays, and they're closed after a certain hour, and they only open at a certain hour, and you might find yourself needing something in the middle of the trail. I would say electrolytes would be a big one, especially depending what time of year you go. It was really freaking hot, and some parts of the trail you don't have a lot of shade cover. So some parts we were in the mountains and we were under the trees, and that was great. We were comfortable even if it was hot outside. But other parts we were, just road walking. So you'll want to make sure that you have, electrolytes, plenty of water. I personally brought each day I brought 2 bottles that had 1.5 liters of water each. We hiked anywhere from, I'd say the shortest day was probably like 5 or 6 hours to, I don't know, we probably had like some 10, 11, 12-hour days. We had everything in between. So I definitely did not want to run short on water, and I had plenty. Most days I only drank like a 1.5 liter during the trip, but I was glad to have extra. You'll also want to bring stuff for sanitizing your hands. Of course, a face mask, you don't need to wear it when you're out in nature, but when you're passing through cities, at least the first couple of days of our trip, you still had to wear a mask even when you were outdoors and not in enclosed spaces. So we had our masks ready to put on as we were passing through towns or going into grocery stores, things like that. Speaking of bathroom stuff, there are some bathrooms along the trail, such as when you're passing through towns, you can sometimes go to a bar or a restaurant or something like that. And of course at the hotels where you might be staying. But there are a lot of parts of the trail, at least on the trail that we were on, that there is no bathroom available. The bathroom that you have available is nature. So if you're not already comfortable going to the bathroom in nature, that might be something that you might want to wrap your mind around. So on that note, you'll want to bring toilet paper, baby wipes, potentially a pee funnel. I wished I had my pee funnel with me. And remember that it's always a good idea to pack out everything that you bring in. So that includes used toilet paper, used baby wipes, that includes orange peels, trash. Don't leave anything behind. It's a really important principle when we are out in nature, whether we're in another country or our home country, to just respect the areas that we're able to use and keep it clean for future travelers that are coming through and for the environment. So please bring a little trash baggie where you can put your used toilet paper, baby wipes, etc., and other trash in there. Let's not leave it in nature. Let's see, what else? Equipment-wise. Oh, what type of clothes to wear? That's probably a question you might be having. Personally, I didn't have a lot of options because I had brought just 2 carry-on bags as my luggage for this multi-month trip that I was on that included the Camino de Santiago, which I only decided to do a couple of days before. So the options were what I had packed in my bag. I had a lot of t-shirts, which honestly, cotton is not the best material for t-shirts because it stays damp. So if you have the option to have synthetic blend t-shirts that are going to be moisture wicking, or tank tops, that will be an advantage. Did wear tank tops some days, although honestly the sun was so strong that I preferred to cover at my shoulders just to kind of have a little bit more sun protection. Sunblock and aloe vera in case you burn, or if you're having strong sun, that's definitely going to be an advantage. Sunglasses. What other clothes? I mostly wore capris, but there are a couple of days that it was cool that I wore like pants, like leggings. If you have, again, moisture wicking and synthetic blend, those are going to be an advantage for you. If you only have cotton, it's not the end of the world. You could still do it, but you might not be as comfortable as you would if you had some more lightweight gear. As I mentioned, I reused my clothes a few times. I think I wore 1 pair of capris twice, 1 pair of pants 2 or 3 times. The t-shirts I changed every day because I feel like, they get pretty sweaty. Underwear, of course, for every day. Sports bras, if that's your thing. That's really it. Layers, of course. We had some cooler, colder, and rainy weather, so I had a fleece jacket and a rain jacket. I ended up leaving the fleece jacket after a couple of days, and one of my friend's partner went and picked up our stuff that we left behind at the hotel to save some weight, so that was super nice. Luckily, we had the convenience of being able to do that because they live in that area, but if you don't have that convenience, think about some lightweight layers that you could bring in case of cold weather. Honestly, later in the trip, there were a couple of nights that were a little chilly, and just having that rain jacket was enough for me to stay warm, and the pants and the socks. Rain jacket. You might want to have an umbrella, walking sticks, or trekking poles. A lot of people had those. That can definitely make your life easier if you're having foot pain, or depending on the surfaces, sometimes the surfaces are wet, or you're climbing up a big pile of rocks. So in those cases, having 4 points of contact instead of 2 can be very helpful. Personally, I'm not a big fan of trekking poles, but when you need them, you need them. And there are definitely some moments that I wish that I had some. I didn't. I made it through. It was completely fine. But that might be something you might like to have. What else? I feel like that's a pretty good summary of like equipment, how to prepare. You'll want to check out your route, and you'll definitely want to work on your fitness level and your hiking abilities depending where you're at now to prepare for the trip. Keep in mind some of these trails are up and down, road walking, so it might be a certain amount of miles that might feel like, oh, that's so easy to do. But on the particular day, given the weather and just given the fact that you're doing this day after day after day, it can take a beating on your body. So that's something to just think about. Get out there and practice and train for this if you're able to, especially depending on your physical condition currently. One thing that I really enjoyed and I think was a big help for us, and if we do another Camino, which we're thinking about, so let's see how everything goes. One thing that was really good for us was taking a rest day or a 0 day. So a day where we just don't hike any miles, we simply rest, take care of our bodies, and we did this about halfway through our trip. It was a little less than halfway through. And the timing worked out really well, and luckily, my friend lives in Vigo, so we were just able to stay at her place, and that worked out great. That might not be the case for you. You might have to pay an extra night in a hotel. But honestly, especially if you haven't prepared enough physically for this, as I mentioned, I literally a few days before was like, oh, let's hike the Camino. And of course, I've been doing hiking for a long time, and I do it as often as I can. But I haven't done a 7 or 8 day hike where I've hiked every single day, maybe ever. I've done some 4 or 5 day backpacking trips, but those have been a couple of years ago. And so I knew that even though I'm in decent shape, even though I'm used to hiking, even though I don't have a very heavy backpack, I knew it would still take its toll. And that rest day really was much needed. We both really appreciated having that, just being able to rest, let our bodies rest. It helped with some of the blisters I was getting and just the physical body discomforts. It helped a lot with our energy to keep going, because the thing is, at least for me, I didn't want the Camino to be something where I'm like struggling every step of the way and I'm like, oh God, this is terrible, but I got to keep going. Like, I wanted it to be something that I would enjoy. Like, I knew it was going to be a challenge. I knew it wasn't going to be all rainbows and butterflies the whole way, but I didn't want it to just be something that I pushed through for the sake of doing. I wanted it to be something that I was feeling well enough to be able to enjoy the beautiful things around me, to take photos, to have some good moments with my friend, and just really enjoy and take advantage of the opportunity. So I think a rest day really helped us a lot with that, and I would recommend for everyone, unless perhaps you're a very experienced, very extreme hiker, a rest day is not going to do you bad. If you plan for it, it'll give you some flexibility in your schedule. If you don't need it, it's fine. You can always have an extra day in Santiago at the end to enjoy the city. You can always take another day slower and divide it up. You can always explore a little bit more. You're probably not going to regret having that extra day, but you might regret having planned your trip so tightly that you have no room to breathe and just suffering as a result. So those are my thoughts on the Camino in terms of tips. Feel free to reach out with any questions. I can only really speak about the route that I did, which is the Camino Portugues, starting in Guarda until Santiago in Galicia. But I'm happy to help if there's anything I can shed light on for you. And hopefully now maybe you didn't know about the Camino before, now you do. That's awesome. Maybe you learned something new, maybe you're feeling inspired, or if any of those things are the case, that's awesome. I'm glad that this video was helpful for you.